Thank you for joining us for the third week of the Under the Dome podcast. I'm Anne Marie Bush, Director of Communications for the Kansas National Education Association, and with me I have Timothy R. Graham, Director of Government Relations for KNEA. This week we tried something a little bit different. We had our first guest on, but before we get to that, Tim, I wanted to just touch base with you and find out if there are any updates on bills.
All right, there's two bills that I want to update you guys on that we've talked about in the recent past. The first one is the bill that we had been sending out alerts on. That's the bill, House Bill 2468. That's
also known as the voucher bill.
The voucher bill, that's right. And if you remember what this bill does, this bill opts us into the federal tax credit program that was included in the big, beautiful bill that passed Congress several weeks ago. This bill also would expand the so-called low-income tax credit that exists already here in Kansas, the so-called low-income tax credit. And so we oppose that bill. You can go back and read our testimony on why we oppose that bill. The bill passed this morning in the House with 70 votes in favor and 49 against. The reason that's important is because 70 is far short of the votes that would be needed to override a gubernatorial veto. And I'm anticipating the governor would veto this if it even goes over to the Senate and remains alive in the second half of the session. So right now we're in good shape of being able to hopefully sustain a veto on there or on that bill should it make it through the entire process.
So that is some positive news.
Yeah, it's positive. I mean, it's kind of making a lemonade out of a lemon right now. But things could change. They could get their extra votes if they needed. But right now we're setting okay there. The other bill that was debated in the Senate yesterday was Senate Bill 387. That's a bill that we opposed. That bill would require families that receive free school lunches to verify their eligibility through reporting by reporting their income. We opposed that bill for several reasons. You can read our testimony why. That bill was debated yesterday in the Senate and passed with 22 votes. Another threshold that is far short of the votes that would be needed if the bill would make it through the process and if the governor would veto that. I don't know if the governor would veto that. I haven't talked to her staff about that bill, and she doesn't promise vetoes ahead of time anyway. So I don't even know where they're kind of at on that bill. But anyways, if this bill was to live through the process and make it to her desk and she vetoed it, it looks like they don't have the votes in the Senate to override that veto. Those are two of the bigger bills that are being debated on the floors of the Senate and the House this week.
So thank you, Tim, for the quick updates on those two bills. I hear that budgets are wrapping up. I know we've been saying that for the last 2 weeks, but I'm holding you to it this week, right?
Yes. They are wrapping up, and we're anticipating full chamber debate in both the Senate and the House next week. Let me tell you where we're at basically on those bills. Obviously, the base state aid has increased because of the Gannon ruling, so we're good there with what the bill does in that aspect. The problem with these bills is that the Senate has only added $10 million of new funding for special education funding. The House kicked the bill out with zero, but they did add in $5 during the deliberations this week in the House Appropriations Committee. So now the House is on the record for $5 million extra for sped funding. The Senate is on the record right now for $10 million extra in sped funding. That's far short of what we really need. I mean, just to stay level, percentage-wise on what we're paying now, we would need $25 million, and that would keep us at the 67th percentile in funding the excess cost of special education. I know a lot of you will know that state law requires us to fund that at 92%. So we're far short of our own statute in what we should be allocating for special education funding. So, and with even if the House and the Senate was to split the difference and end up with $7 million of new special education funding, we would drop by several percentage points, probably somewhere around only funding 65% excess costs of special education. So that's something that we're concerned about, and I don't know. The process is still a long ways from over and finished. Maybe we can get some more funding. Maybe we won't. I don't know. The other thing I wanted to say, too, about the Senate budget is we were able to get some language in the bill that would offer extra funding for the teacher mentor program and also professional development money that historically has been funded outside of the formula and has been funded with extra money. Last year, that extra money was deleted. And so any school district that was offering those programs had to come up with that money through their general funds. So it was, taking away money just like they had to take away money out of their general funds to fully fund SPED. The same thing was that they were having to do the same thing last year to continue these programs. This year, we got some language in the bill on the House side that would allow for the Kansas Department of Education to use that money that's left over from the year before to fund these programs. So, is it ideal? No. Will they have to continue to go back every year and do this? Yes. At the moment, they will. But at least we were able to get a couple $1 million to fund those programs in the House bill, and hopefully it stays through the whole process and makes it through any future bill.
All right. Thank you for the update on the budgets. So yesterday we sat down with Representative Blake Carpenter to discuss a constitutional amendment that he's really kind of put a lot of research and time and dedication into. Do you want to talk a little bit about that before we go into that?
Yeah, he's calling his proposal the Freedom from Tax Bill. It's you guys will have to listen to the conversation about this. I think some of you might find it interesting. Here's the deal: we're in reading this bill or having the concept explained to us. It's problematic for us because it basically does away with our funding, right? Now, he really believes that he's got a way of backfilling that funding. When I'm talking about our funding, I'm talking about the property tax funding that we have through state law that requires each district to raise 20 mills locally, and it does away with that, and so it's very concerning. So get in, listen to this, give us your feedback, understand that we're not endorsing this. I'm not trying to get anybody to buy into supporting this by any means.
It's basically informational.
It's informational, and we're trying to do something different. You'll hear in the discussion we have about how he reached out to us and he wanted to talk to us. We're not used to that. We're not used to, particularly on the Republican side, but even on the Democratic side, we're not always used to having a heads up on bills, particularly bills that directly affect us. He anticipated that we would scream very loudly about this bill, and rightfully so at face value. And that's why he's reached out and he's like, I at least want to have an opportunity to talk to your members. And, in talking to you and others, we thought this would be a good time for us to have a guest on.
And you asked some really good questions and pushed back, which I appreciate that. So it was a good conversation. Yeah,
I encourage you guys to listen to it. And I think if nothing else, we're trying to open up dialogue with members of the legislature that we haven't traditionally had as much open conversation with. And so Blake reached out, and he reached out several times, and we thought this would be a great opportunity for him to be on the podcast.
All right. We hope you enjoy the conversation with him.
All right. Well, I am at the State House right now, and I'm in an undisclosed location that I've been sworn to keep secret, and I'm with Representative Blake Carpenter, who's also the Speaker Pro Temp of the Kansas House of Representatives. Blake, or Representative.
Blake's fine.
There you go. Before we jump into more of the podcast, just tell us about yourself so our members know who you are and where you're from and give them a little bit of background.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Tim, for having me on your podcast today. I sincerely appreciate it. I am from Derby, Kansas, and I've been serving in the legislature, first elected in 2014. And it's been a great honor to serve the people of my district there. I have McConnell Air Force Base in that area. In the past, I've been the chairman of elections. I've been the House Majority Whip. Now I'm the Speaker Pro Tem in the Kansas House of Representatives as well, as you've already stated. But no, again, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and just, I think this is interesting. You took a leave of absence at one time to serve our country. You want to share?
I can do that. So in the 2022 session, I took a step back from the legislature. I used a statute that was passed in the early 1940s. In the state of Kansas, if you are an elected official and you get called away on military duty or orders, you can leave to go do those orders, and then if you come back before the election takes place, somebody serves in your stead, and then when you come back, you can basically reassume your seat. And so I was gone during the 2022 session, and Representative Leah Howell actually replaced me that year. And then I ended up catching the final day of that session when I returned, and then was sworn back into the seat and ran again in 2022, and here today still. So,
well, we thank you for your service. And so before we get into the bill, I just want to acknowledge that we don't always get this type of early outreach from legislators on either side of the aisle, to be honest with you. There's a lot of bills that get dropped that we hear about just through social media and whatnot, and a lot of those bills directly affect our members and the students in the classroom. So I appreciate you reaching out. And can you what prompted you to reach out to us?
That's a great question. So during the process of working on this bill that we're getting ready to discuss here in a few moments, what I wanted to do was build a coalition. And I when I introduced this idea, this constitutional amendment, I wanted to make sure that people understood what it actually did, because there's a lot of moving parts to it, and there's a number of things that it's just new concepts that people haven't really discussed here in the State House before. And so I wanted to make sure that education campaign, I guess you could call it, occurred prior to its introduction. And we don't have a bill number or anything like that yet. It's still in the revisor's office. I'm hoping to get it here sometime within this next week, so that we can start working on it, getting it actually introduced. But when I saw you or any other government relations people essentially on the third floor rotunda, I was like, hey, you know what? You might have an interest in this idea. And so that's where this outreach began. And I started collecting ideas and feedback from these entities and these groups. And that's kind of what I'm looking for from you guys today is your members. What do you guys actually think about this idea? Does it have value? Is there something that we can do to potentially tweak it to make it work better in the long run? Because what I'm attempting to do is take the partisan politics out of today's environment and build something that lasts for the next 100+ years for the future generations of Kansans. And I think that this is one of those solutions that it absolutely can take care of our kids and our grandchildren.
Well, again, we appreciate the outreach. When I got Michael, when I got his initial email, I thought, they must have accidentally left me on a list, because I don't think they want to talk to us about this. But anyways, we appreciate it. And so let's jump into the bill. Tell us about your plan.
Yeah, absolutely. No, well, thank you first of all, again, for having me on to be able to present this to your members. So it's a constitutional amendment, and Lord knows we got plenty of those going around the Capitol building these days, and so this is just another constitutional amendment. Well, it's different, and here's how it's different. So when we look at the Constitution, we have to be very careful with it. We have to build a solid foundation. And the reason why this is a constitutional amendment is because what I'm doing is seeking to create a fund within the Constitution. Well, why aren't you doing that by statute? Well, the reason why is because if we put a bunch of money into anything that's protected by statute, it can be raided, it can be swept. We've seen this from time to time, whether it's highway funds. When times get hard, highway funds get taken. I think Bank of KDOT comes up to mind for most people when they think about that. Or the stabilization fund, the rainy day fund that we have. A lot of people are trying to appropriate the almost $2 billion that exist in that, or the interest from it. And so there's always ideas about how we can use this money. And so what I'm wanting to do is create this constitutionally protected fund that builds in with money principal over time, and then that interest is then used to eliminate or eliminate various portions of our tax. Now, if you look at what some other countries or states have done, so Norway has the Sovereign Wealth Fund there for them. It's over $2 trillion now, and Norway has a population size of 5.5 million people, and their Sovereign Wealth Fund paid out over $220 billion just a few years ago. Alaska and Texas have permanent funds. Alaska's permanent fund was created in 1975, and it's protected, and that's what they use to help fund portions of their government. They actually also pay dividends out to their citizens in that state as well. In Texas, their permanent fund is used to fund portions of their K-12 education and also some of their higher education as well. That fund paid out a little over $2 billion just a few years ago to K-12. So this is looking at how can we have our money work for ourselves, just like everybody does for maybe their retirement. You build so that you have a nest egg so that you can earn interest off of that nest egg, and that'll allow you to enjoy retirement comfortably.
So when I sat down and talked to you the first time about this, and you had a very well put together PowerPoint, but the first thing I saw was that it eliminates property taxes down the line, and of course my gut just kind of sunk. I was like, well, this is a non-starter for us, because as you know, several of our school districts, they receive about up to a third of their funding through property taxes, through the 20 mil levy that the state imposes, and then the optional local option budget that I think is up to, you add those together, it's up to over a third, probably 34% of their budget. So how are you going to pay for, how are you going to backfill that if this passes and we do away with property taxes?
So this works in a very sequential manner. And so there's 3 phases in this constitutional amendment that we are developing. The first phase is the elimination of vehicle property taxes. And the second phase is the elimination of the 20 mills. And the third and final phase is the elimination of income taxes. Now, unlike what a lot of other states are doing, or even the state of Kansas is doing currently, where taxes are kind of like a shell game almost, where, hey, we're going to eliminate your income taxes, but we have to raise a ton of sales taxes in order to basically pay for it. That's where it seems like there's a lot of shell games going on of we're not really reducing the tax burden, we're just moving where we're getting the money from. And now arguments could be made that maybe eliminating the income tax will spur economic growth and bring people in and so on and so forth. Well, that's a debate for another time. But at the end of the day, how it's all going to work is that I'll just focus on phase 1 for right now, and then we'll work through the other phases. But it'll take about 7 to 8 years if you hit all the assumptions that are involved with this plan. Now, wait, Blake, what's the seed money for making all of this work? Because you're going to need a lot of seed money. Right now, the state of Kansas forgoes $9 billion a year in sales tax exemptions. And we do more with credits, but that's another conversation for another time. Now, with those $9 billion, the goal would be to get $2 billion of the 9. And if we can repeal basically $2 billion, we broaden the tax base, more people are paying into it, less special interest. And what ends up happening is that $2 billion, instead of going to the state general fund where we just start spending it on various governmental programs or whatever else, whoever else in power at the time wants to spend that money on, and then we end up in the situation that we're in again, where, okay, we cut taxes, and then we're in a hole. We cut taxes, we're in a hole. It's very cyclical, and I think we've seen that over many decades. So instead of putting that $2 billion into the state general fund, what we're doing is putting it into this constitutionally protected fund. And it then grows every single year, and you allow the compounding interest to grow on it. Now, there's a rule that we're putting in place. So just for simple math purposes, I'm going to just use very simple numbers here. So let's say that after 8 years, we have $20 billion in the first phase. Well, 5% of $20 billion is $1 billion. And last year, the counties collected roughly $450 million in vehicle property taxes. Well, if you can get 5%, which I would argue is if you have a professional money manager, you should be able to get 5% return on your investment in a year. That $1 billion is then taken, and there's a rule that's applied to it. It's a 45-45-10 rule. So it's 45% that goes to pay out, 45% that is then reinvested into the principal so the fund continues to grow, and 10% that is invested into a reserve fund. Now, at 45% at $1 billion, it's $450 million. So that's how you would then hit the threshold to eliminate that tax. It would be backfilled by that investment revenue. And so that the local governments do not actually see a reduction in their tax base because it's backfilled by that fund. Now, what happens is because you're putting another 45% or $450 million back into the principal, the next year you're going to end up with more of a payout because it continues to grow over time. That reserve fund is used in case, let's say, I failed to mention something. There's a 5-year rolling average with this. And so if, let's say, over a 5-year period, on average, we're getting 5% returns, and 1 year there's a slight dip, and we end up with a 4.75% return. The reserve fund then kicks in to help smooth out that volatility, and so does the 5-year rolling average. All that volatility is smoothed out with both those mechanisms to where it makes it to where it's very stable over the long term. And so that is how you basically go through each of these 3 phases. You only eliminate a phase of tax when it has sufficient funds within this constitutionally protected fund to eliminate those items. So the 20 mills that you and I have discussed, well, right now, school districts benefit from that because we obviously collect it at the state and then we redistribute to make sure that it's equal across the state, because a mill that's raised in Goodland is not necessarily the same amount as a mill that's raised in Blue Valley, right? I think we all can understand that. And so the concept for phase 2 is the 20 mills would be a constitutional item that is now added, and it's only eliminated once that fund is healthy enough to then continue to basically pay out to all those schools. So the schools are held whole in this entire process. And what I would argue and submit to you and all your listeners is that it actually, I think, is a better deal in the long run, because while the 20 mills today, it exists as statute. It could potentially go away. I'm not saying that it is by any means, but it's not as guaranteed as if it's something that has been placed into the Constitution, and the guardrails are there to protect that funding, and that guarantees at least that 20 mills of funding, and then in perpetuity, as that fund continues to grow, it continues to pay out. And in really, really good years, obviously you get better payouts. You also get more growth in the long run, and I think that is a very positive thing about this entire idea.
So, and I appreciate the very very deep analysis and explanation, but at the end of the day, are we basically just eliminating the sales tax exemptions to pay for this, correct?
You know, yes, you are. There's the temporary upfront where you do have to where people are paying that sales tax upfront. But the beauty of this entire plan, though, is that while it is being paid upfront, when these other forms of taxation are eliminated in the long run, they're completely eliminated, and Kansans as a whole have a lower tax burden compared to not only our neighboring states, but by the time these 3 phases would be completed, which the first phase is around 7-8 years, second phase for the 20 mills would be around 14-15 years. Again, these are all based on assumptions and very conservative assumptions at that. And then the third and final phase would be about 30 to 40 years. So, well, Blake, that's a really long time. You know, the problem is that a lot of the times we as elected officials or politicians are only looking maybe to the next election or to whatever office that person is running for next. And I'm trying to change that mentality to where we start looking to take care of future generations. Just like the people who make up your membership are nurturing the future minds that are going to run our country. That is essentially what we are attempting to do with this, is that we are trying to leave them a better state than what they have today. We're trying to give everybody hope for the future, and by giving them a lower tax burdened environment in that future that's paid for is the best investment that we can make today on their behalf. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today.
I appreciate that, but so just to push back on you a little bit on the sales tax portion and the difference in taxes. If you eliminate the taxes, the sales tax exemptions, then that means that many of our members, a lot of them are middle income earners, a lot of them don't even own their own homes and property. So what you're doing is basically you're creating a bigger burden for them, in the grocery stores. I mean, if we eliminate this, the sales tax on food, or the exemption on sales tax on food. And basically, a lot of our members would see that as kind of a regressive step backwards in putting the burden more on the middle income earner and less on the more wealthy, land rich folks and others. Can you answer? What would your response be on that?
My response would be this: is that I'm pretty sure that most of the listeners out there have vehicles, and so everybody that's from rich to poor pay vehicle property taxes. I don't think I've had many constituents tell me that they hate paying vehicle property taxes. Everybody's going to feel that relief. And then from there, yes, you do have the 20 mils on property. Okay, even if your members don't own property, at the end of the day, if they're a tenant, well, the landlord is still baking that property tax into that rent. And so they're still paying it, just not maybe in a direct form, but by through their landlord. So they're still getting a tax break from that 20 mil reduction as well. But then also when it comes to the income tax portion of this as well, that would all be paid for, backfilled, and it would make it to where stop the cyclical cycle. I can understand where you're coming from. As far as your philosophy and where a lot of your members' philosophy would be on this, as far as paying that income tax on various things. But the thing is that unlike Texas, unlike Florida, we don't have 32 million people like Texas, right? And so when you start passing all these exemptions, and we have these exemptions on the books for decades, the problem becomes that we are whittling away our tax base, and what it's doing is it's then increasing the tax burden on those middle class folks, because when you allow for these various items to be blown up if you allow holes to be blown into your tax base, you're narrowing it, and that means that there's more that is now placed on those that are currently paying the taxes. And so when you broaden that tax base, you're making it more fair for everybody, that the special interest or anybody else, everybody's now paying a more fair share of the tax. And so to your point, yes, there would be a short-term period where that they would potentially be paying these higher sales taxes, yes. But in the long term, it all ends up working out to where we're not transferring it and making that shell game. Because what we could do is like what Missouri, North Carolina, or any of these other states are doing right now and say, okay, we don't currently tax services, but we're going to go ahead and start taxing services with a sales tax, and we're going to start making it to where we have zero income taxes, period. Well, again, that's a shell game. All you did was move the burden, and not necessarily for the better, right? So I think that this is still a long-term solution that still provides value overall to the people in the long term. Sorry, that was a really long answer to your question.
Right. No, but I appreciate it. I mean, what you're demonstrating to me, at least, is that you've put a lot of thought into this, right? You really have researched this. Whether we end up thinking it's a great idea or a terrible idea, you have done your homework, and so I appreciate these explanations. And I just have a couple more quick questions. A lot of these sovereign wealth funds are often built from wealth that already exists. Mm-hmm. Like natural resources. You mentioned Texas and Alaska. I believe that maybe their seed money or their basis is probably oil.
It's oil and land. Same with Norway. It's a lot of it's natural resources based. Now in Kansas, we don't. I mean, yes, we have oil, we have gas, but it's not to the same extent as some of those other states have, right? Why was this selected as a possible funding solution or mechanism? Well, because $9 billion foregone is a lot of money, and when you look at it, if you can get $2 billion out of it, all the math ends up working out. Now, if we had the ability to have natural resources or other things like that could produce the amount of money that's required to seed this fund, then I think that could absolutely be a part of the conversation. I just haven't been able to think of it because I think need at least $1.5 billion to $2 billion in order to make this work to where the timelines aren't just extreme. Because if let's say we did $1 billion into this fund every year instead of $2 billion, well, go ahead and double all the timelines I just gave you. That's well over 100 years. I would argue that many of your listeners or any other Kansans would be like, yeah, I don't really want to support something that's going to exist in 110 years, right? That's a little excessive. However, when it comes to waiting maybe 10 or 20 years, that might be a long time for us, but for government, that's no time at all.
Gotcha. Well, before I ask you your last question, which is going to give you an opportunity for us to end on a really positive note, do you just tell us what are the chances that your bill is going to get any movement this year? Tell us, because with it being a constitutional amendment, it's not just 62 votes you got to get 84.
84.
Right?
It's 84 and 27, so you got to pass through both chambers.
And I meant 63.
Yes, no worries. So, great question. That's the reason why I'm reaching out to you. That's the reason why I'm reaching out to everybody else. It's right now, I would argue that I'm more in the education phase and the coalition building phase of this plan. If I can get you guys to, maybe if you guys aren't proponents, maybe I can get the KNEA on as neutrals and say, yeah, actually this could make sense. This does make sense for us. We can't get on with all the components of this, but hey, you're cutting a tax, but it's still being backfilled in a very responsible way. And maybe by us having this conversation, we can potentially come to those types of terms. Now, if not, then that's okay. If you guys end up coming in as opponents, I completely understand too, because you guys have to do what your members are asking you to do. But that's also why I'm soliciting that feedback. And that's also why I'm having the conversations with a lot of other groups, a lot of other entities, national, state, local. And it's been a lot of very positive conversations. There's been a few things about the bill that, like what you're bringing up, that I think are fair to point out. Absolutely. But I think when you're starting to look at big ideas like this, that you have to look at it as a holistic concept. And I think that the good significantly outweighs the bad. I'll let you go ahead and ask me the final thing so we can end on a positive note, but I do have a few things that I'll just mention as we wrap up.
Okay, yeah. So, as our members start looking at this when the bill is finally published, you think probably by the end of the week we'll have a bill number is what I'm hearing maybe?
By the end of the week, I'll probably have it back from the revisers, but you're probably not going to have a bill number for probably another week or two, because I'm going to probably be going out and getting some co-sponsors on this and asking some folks. We're also going to be looking at having it passed around also on the Senate side for co-sponsors as well.
What message do you want to leave with our listeners?
Well, again, first of all, thank you for your time, and for those out there that are listening, I sincerely appreciate this opportunity. When you walk into the Kansas Capitol through the Visitor Center, there's a quote from President Eisenhower on the wall to your left as you're walking into the building, and it says, "The politician thinks of me and today, the statesman thinks of us and tomorrow." And I think that is what this is getting after, is let's stop acting like politicians and let's start acting like statesmen that leave a better future for the generations that are to follow us. And if we can leave them with something that is responsible and something that is funded and something that we're not shifting the tax burden onto one class of citizen or another, then I think that is a future that many can get behind, whether you're left, right, or center. And so that's what my hope is for this entire thing. And again, I sincerely appreciate your time.
Well, we appreciate yours too, and we'll get back with you, right?
Okay.
once we get this out on our website and have people listening to it, we'll be able to provide you some feedback. I guess I was going to let you end on a positive note, but one other question: if we have to oppose this, and we do have resolutions that I told you about that would make us oppose something that would eliminate the three-legged stool. For tax fairness or tax stability, revenue stability. How do we do this in a way that doesn't alienate you in your office and maybe some of your allies that are pushing forward for this bill? Well,
I've been doing this for a few years, and it's one of those deals of sometimes you're friends today, sometimes you're enemies tomorrow, but you still have to work with people, and you still got to get things passed. So I guess what my response back to that is I'm a big boy and I can handle it. And so if that's just the way it is on this issue, then that's the way it is on this issue, and we'll work through it to the best of our ability, and then we'll see what we can work on tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you, Blake.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
All right.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to the third week of the Under the Dome podcast. And thank you, Tim, for answering questions and for the conversation with Blake. Anything else that you have to wrap up the week with?
We'll be talking next week about turnaround. Turnaround is the official halftime of the Kansas legislative session. So we're getting to halftime next week, believe it or not.
Oh, my gosh. That's good.
Yeah, it is good. It is, yeah. Yes.
A lot of stuff happening in this session.
A lot, very, very, very busy. Everything happens very quickly up here. We don't get a lot of lead time in knowing what's dropping and what's being heard. So, yeah, it's pretty hectic right now. And getting to the halfway point, at least we can start seeing a light at the end of the tunnel.
All right. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
All right.